I've started a new channel called Lanila Tales. Please subscribe and watch my best stories there. Link is in the description. The last thing Milo Trent remembered before being swallowed by a column of blue light was that his coffee was still too hot to drink. 1 second he was scowling at his frozen computer screen, muttering about password policies, and the next he was upside down in what looked like a chrome blender with opinions. The floor wasn't there. The air smelled faintly of wet batteries and mint toothpaste. When the swirling haze cleared, a dozen eyes the size of dinner plates blinked at him in unison. The creatures looked halfway between angry jellyfish and disappointed teachers. Milo, hanging midair, said the first thing that came to mind. You guys could really use a receptionist. The aliens didn't laugh. They murmured to one another in a liquid clicking language, their long limbs weaving as if stirring invisible soup. A booming voice echoed through the chamber, translated with all the warmth of a voicemail robot. Human specimen number 78. You are aboard the Zorthan command ship. Identify your species' emotional core. Milo squinted at the nearest one. My emotional core? That's coffee. Which you've rudely interrupted. The aliens exchanged glances. One scribbled on a floating tablet with a beam of light. Another tilted its head, 8 eyes narrowing in disbelief. They had expected screaming, tears, begging, the usual reaction to abduction. Milo just rubbed the back of his neck, adjusting the smartwatch that still blinked on his wrist. The display pulsed faintly, T00:59:59. He noticed it but didn't react. The creatures probably thought it was a primitive chronometer. If they knew it was counting down to something they couldn't begin to understand, they might not be laughing. The largest alien floated closer, a being of translucent muscle and arrogance. Your calm is noted, human. You display no fear. Milo shrugged. Oh, I'm terrified on the inside. You just have a bad camera angle. Another ripple of confusion spread among the commanders. The translator glitched, spitting out a phrase that sounded like, You possess the emotional bladder of a stone. Milo chuckled. You mean backbone. But I'll take it. They led him down a corridor lined with glowing panels that seemed to breathe. The air shimmered with energy, and Milo's reflections stretched weirdly in every direction. He tried not to stare at a small porthole where space unrolled like black silk dotted with diamonds. Beautiful view, he said. Do you guys have a lounge or something? Maybe a souvenir shop? One of the guards jabbed him with a spear that emitted a soft ping instead of pain. Milo frowned. Okay, so that's annoying, not lethal. Great intimidation strategy. They brought him into a chamber that looked like a courtroom designed by people who had only ever read about courts. A circular platform rose from the floor, and above it hovered a council of Zorthan commanders, each with a different shade of translucent glow. They studied him like a particularly dull insect. The lead commander introduced himself as Zoro Prime, though the translator first rendered it as Sorrow Plume, which Milo thought was much better branding. Zoro Prime's voice vibrated through the air. You are calm, human. Are you defective? Milo spread his arms. Well, my landlord says I'm emotionally unavailable, if that counts. A few of the smaller aliens emitted what might have been laughter or hiccups. Zoro's glow dimmed in irritation. Mockery will not save you. The Zorthan command extracts fear to fuel our consciousness amplifiers. Your resistance interferes with the process. Milo blinked. So you kidnap people because you need emotional batteries? The commander's eyes flared. Precisely. Milo nodded thoughtfully. And you chose accountants, dentists, and office workers. Yeah, that's your problem right there. The chamber went silent. Even the lights seemed offended. Zoro's tendrils curled like fists. Your insolence amuses us. You will beg before the hour ends. Milo looked down at his watch. T00:53:02. He smiled faintly. You might want to stand back for that. They began the interrogation ritual. A floating orb descended, humming with pale energy. It pulsed in rhythm with Milo's heartbeat. The air grew thick, vibrating with a low hum that made his teeth ache. Images flickered in front of him: his apartment, his mother's garden, the alley cat that followed him home sometimes. They were trying to probe his memories. Milo tilted his head, impressed despite himself. Not bad. You almost captured my good side. Zoro hissed. Your mind is resistant. You mock us even as we peel your consciousness. Milo replied. I've worked in IT support for 8 years. You can't scare someone who's survived Monday meetings. The orb intensified its light, projecting more personal memories. The lab, the countdown sequences, the faint echo of a female voice saying, If something goes wrong, trigger the failsafe. Milo forced his expression to remain blank. The aliens didn't notice his subtle tension, only his unshakable calm. They mistook it for defiance. Zoro leaned closer, studying his face with all 8 eyes. You are either the bravest of your species or its dullest. Milo smiled. I'll take whichever comes with dental. That earned a few nervous clicks from the subcommanders. Zoro straightened. Enough games. Extract his emotional core. The orb glowed brighter. Milo's smartwatch flickered again. T00:41:16. He flexed his wrist, and the alien devices around him reacted faintly to the signal, their lights dimming for a moment. He caught that tiny glitch and exhaled quietly. It was working. He needed to keep them distracted. One of the junior aliens approached with a bowl of translucent liquid. Consume, the translator said. Milo peered into it. The contents shimmered like melted glass. Is this your version of a smoothie? Because I'm allergic to interdimensional goo. The alien stared blankly. It induces truth. Milo sighed. Fine, but if I start confessing my tax history, that's on you. He took a sip and immediately gagged. Tastes like fear and regret. Is that the flavor profile you were going for? The alien commanders exchanged perplexed looks. Their experiments had never gone like this. They whispered to one another, clearly unsettled. Milo leaned against the glowing platform, feigning nonchalance. You know, I get it. You're big, scary, cosmic overlords. But honestly, the intimidation factor drops when your leader looks like a glowing squid in a bathrobe. One alien lunged forward, tendrils quivering with rage. Silence, human! The translator hiccuped and instead said, Sing, human! The commander froze, confused. Milo raised an eyebrow. You sure? I've been told my karaoke can cause structural damage. The others began arguing in their native tongue, tentacles flailing as their translator tried to correct the command. Milo couldn't help chuckling. Amid the chaos, his watch beeped softly, T00:38:09. Beneath the surface of his calm smile, he felt his pulse race. The signal was reaching the relay. The system would activate soon, whether he was ready or not. He took a slow breath, straightened, and looked up at the circle of bewildered aliens. Gentlemen, ladies, and whatever the glowing one is, you might want to wrap this up. I'm on a bit of a schedule. Zoro Prime hissed. You mock your fate, human? Milo met his gaze evenly. No. I'm just trying to give you a fair warning. It's bad manners to keep the universe waiting. Milo woke to the sensation of something cold and jelly-like being dabbed on his forehead. His eyelids fluttered open to find 3 aliens hovering over him, each holding a different utensil that looked uncomfortably medical. One had what resembled a whisk, another a funnel, and the third was holding something that looked like a glowing lemon juicer. He groaned softly. You guys sure this is an interrogation and not brunch? The nearest alien ignored him and squirted another dollop of translucent goo across his temples. The substance shimmered and began to hum. Milo shivered. Okay, fine. Spa day it is. The chamber he was in had changed. It was smaller now, rounded walls pulsing gently with light, like the inside of a sleeping creature. Tubes ran from the ceiling into the center, where he was strapped upright in a metallic frame that hummed softly with energy. The lead alien from before, Zoro Prime, stood nearby, his glow pulsing with visible irritation. The serum will dissolve your mental shields, Zoro announced. You will reveal the truth of your purpose. Milo tilted his head, pretending to ponder. My purpose? I mostly exist to confuse customer support representatives. You sure you want that downloaded? The alien behind him activated a control panel. A wave of cold rippled through Milo's brain, like someone had opened a freezer in his skull. Images flickered across his mind: his apartment, his old lab, the laughter of a colleague named Ria. He clenched his jaw, forcing his face to stay calm even as his pulse spiked. The display on his wrist, still hidden beneath the metal restraints, blinked faintly: T00:38:17. He counted the seconds silently. If he played this right, he wouldn't have to do anything. They'd destroy themselves by curiosity before the countdown reached 0. One of the smaller aliens stepped closer with a beaker of shimmering liquid. Drink, the translator barked. Milo stared at it suspiciously. Let me guess. True serum? The alien nodded proudly. Formulated from the tears of a frightened moon creature. Milo's eyebrows rose. You guys collect tears for science? That's dark. Also, kind of poetic. He sighed and took the beaker with both hands, downing it in one swallow. The flavor hit him like expired soda mixed with battery acid. He gagged and muttered, Congratulations, you've discovered anti-flavor. The aliens leaned forward expectantly. Zoro demanded, What is your designation? Milo blinked. Milo Trent. Certified coffee addict, occasional nap enthusiast. Your mission? Zoro pressed. Milo frowned theatrically. Survive meetings. Maybe retire before 80. The aliens began chattering nervously. The serum should have made him confess anything. Instead, his calmness seemed to short-circuit their confidence. Perhaps he is defective, one muttered. Milo smiled. You keep saying that, and I'm starting to feel like I should ask for a refund. The translator hiccuped suddenly, turning Zoro's next command into nonsense. Extract the jelly of his courage, it barked. Milo blinked. I don't have that organ, but if I did, I'm keeping it. The aliens started arguing, their translator scrambling to correct itself. Milo tilted his head, noting how every flicker of argument corresponded with minor power surges around the room. He realized their systems were wired through the translator interface. If he kept them fighting, he could overload the circuits and maybe loosen his restraints. He leaned forward and whispered conspiratorially to one of the junior aliens. You know, he just called your mother a gelatinous egg sack. The alien froze, eyes wide. He did not. Pretty sure he did, Milo said casually. You might want to check the recording. The alien turned toward Zoro, his glow darkening with fury. You insulted my progenitor's purity membrane. Zoro's voice flared. Silence, fool! The human deceives you. The two began shouting, their voices echoing through the chamber like rolling thunder. Sparks leaped from the translator orb. Milo smirked. Well, that escalated beautifully. A third alien tried to restore order but slipped on a puddle of spilled serum and collapsed into a shrieking heap. Milo couldn't resist. For a superior race, your safety standards are impressive. His laughter filled the chamber as the translator flickered wildly, turning alien words into random phrases. Boil the human's logic, shouted one. Feed him to the paperwork, another cried. Milo almost felt bad. Almost. When the chaos reached its peak, the lights flickered and dimmed. A low hum filled the room, deep and resonant, as if the ship itself was growling. Milo's restraints loosened slightly in the confusion. He flexed his fingers and quietly adjusted the angle of his wrist. The countdown read T00:30:02. He had to buy more time. Zoro whirled back toward him, tendrils twitching. Enough of your insolence. We will extract your memories by force. Milo sighed dramatically. Finally. I thought we'd never get to the painful part. The commander raised a shimmering rod and pressed it to Milo's temple. Pain shot through him, sharp and electric, but he bit back the scream. He thought of Ria again, her voice, her warning. If they ever come, keep your calm. They'll never suspect what calm really means. He focused on that thought until the pain dulled into static. The translator misread Milo's brainwaves and began broadcasting random fragments of his memories onto holographic screens. Suddenly, the aliens were staring at scenes of Earth traffic jams, microwaves exploding, and a cat aggressively knocking over a glass. They flinched back in confusion. "What are these horrors?" one whispered. Milo forced a smirk. "Welcome to my planet. We call it Monday." Zoro slammed a tendril against the console, his glow pulsing red. "You toy with us, human?" Milo nodded. "That's pretty much my coping mechanism," the commander hissed, turning to his subordinates. "Prepare the memory spike. He will tell us everything." Milo tilted his head, expression unreadable. "You're wasting time. The real show's about to start." The aliens froze. "What show?" Zoro demanded. Milo simply smiled. "The one where you realize you're not the only ones running experiments." He wasn't bluffing entirely. The device on his wrist wasn't just counting down, it was transmitting a frequency into the ship's systems, subtle enough to evade detection. Every minute, it adapted to their energy fields, spreading like a quiet infection. But they didn't know that. They thought his words were empty bravado. One of the guards jabbed him with the energy spear again. "You have no power here," the translator said flatly. Milo exhaled and looked up at the ceiling, where faint lines of blue light began tracing patterns. "Yeah," he murmured. "Keep telling yourselves that." The aliens resumed their procedures. The serum was reapplied, the translator recalibrated, and Zoro's voice droned through the static haze. Milo barely heard it. His heartbeat synchronized with the pulse of his watch. Every vibration matched perfectly with the hum of the ship. He realized the frequencies were merging. For the first time, a flicker of worry crept through him. The countdown was adapting faster than he expected. If it synced too soon, the pulse could fire before he escaped. He had to stay calm, but this time the calm wasn't an act, it was survival. The darkness felt alive, humming through every nerve like static under skin. Milo opened his eyes to thin veins of blue light crawling back along the walls, the ship slowly recovering from its blackout. The air smelled of ozone and panic. Aliens stumbled around, their glowing forms flickering erratically as systems rebooted. Sparks spat from overhead tubes, sizzling against the floor. Milo took a long, calm breath. The energy bands restraining him were gone, likely shorted out by the surge. His arms ached as he flexed his fingers, testing freedom without making it obvious. Across the chamber, Zoro Prime glowed faintly, fury still rippling through his translucent veins. "Contain the human," Zoro ordered, his voice shaking with something dangerously close to fear. The others hesitated. Fear, Milo thought, they finally tasted it. The countdown on his watch now read T00:18:42. The digits pulsed like a heartbeat beneath his skin. He kept his hand low, careful to hide it behind his back. The power readings from his device had spiked during the blackout, meaning the synchronization was complete. The failsafe was now alive, its signal intertwined with the ship's systems, quietly spreading through the Zorthan network like a whisper no one could hear until it screamed. An alien technician stumbled toward a console, babbling in its native tongue, frantically tapping on holographic keys. Milo watched the reflected code streaming up the transparent wall behind him. He recognized fragments of language, similar to what he'd seen years ago in the lab. For a brief moment, the memory broke through his composure. He was back in the underground facility of Project Prometheus, where light never reached and machines hummed with too much intelligence. The air there had smelled the same: ozone, electricity, and fear. He remembered the moment Rhea had placed the prototype in his hands. "It's not just a weapon," she had whispered. "It's a safeguard. It reads emotion, converts it to signal. The calmer the operator, the cleaner the pulse." He had stared at her, confused and uneasy. "You mean it only works if you're zen while everything burns?" She had smiled sadly. "Exactly. Fear feeds chaos. Calm is precision." The image faded as Zoro floated closer, his tendrils twitching. "You will explain this disruption," the commander demanded. What force did you release? Milo met his gaze, face unreadable. That depends. How much do you know about human Wi-Fi? The translator sputtered, unable to find context, and the aliens exchanged nervous clicks. Zoro slammed a glowing appendage against the wall. Enough riddles. Your pulse signature matches no known weapon. Milo tilted his head. That's because it's not a weapon. It's insurance. Zoro's glow dimmed slightly, uncertainty creeping into his posture. Milo knew he had to maintain the upper hand, or at least the illusion of it. You wanted my emotional core, he said softly. Well, congratulations. You're standing inside it now. The commander hesitated. Explain. Milo took a slow step forward, the energy field around him flickering weakly. You thought humans are fragile. You thought we crumble under fear. But what you don't understand is that calm isn't weakness. It's control. It's the difference between panic and precision. His watch blinked again, T00:15:21. Behind Zoro, one of the consoles exploded in a burst of green sparks. Alarms wailed, deep and throaty. The ship's voice filled the air, translated awkwardly into English. Warning. Core stability compromised. Foreign signal integration detected. The aliens spun in alarm, rushing to the terminals. Milo simply stood there, watching the chaos unfold with the faintest trace of irony. You might want to unplug something, he said helpfully. The memory of Rhea pressed harder into his thoughts now, unbidden. He could almost hear her voice in his ear. You can't control Prometheus forever. It's meant to burn away everything infected by fear. If the aliens trigger it, it won't just disable them, it'll erase their entire neural network. Milo had tried to shut the project down after that. He had buried the code, disguised the device as an ordinary smartwatch, and walked away. But deep down, he knew one day it would call him back. And it had, in the most ironic way possible, by dragging him into the hands of those it was built to destroy. A nearby alien scientist shrieked something to Zoro. The translator struggled to keep up. The pulse is adapting to the ship's systems. It is learning. The words made Milo's stomach twist. Learning. That was the part he'd forgotten to mention. Prometheus wasn't just code, it was sentient, in a quiet, calculating way. It was listening to everything. He looked at his watch again. T00:12:00. The seconds seemed to beat louder, the digits reflecting off the metal floor like tiny fragments of light. Zoro turned on him, fury replacing fear. Deactivate it, human! Or we will tear the knowledge from your flesh. Milo met his glare with an almost gentle calm. You can't deactivate it. It's tied to my biometric readings. As long as my heart beats steady, it runs. If you hurt me, if I panic, it triggers early. The aliens froze. The silence was almost comical. Milo sighed. You see the dilemma? They began arguing among themselves, voices rising, some insisting they find a way to sever the connection, others demanding they evacuate. One small alien muttered that this was why they should never have abducted mammals. Milo couldn't help it, he laughed. The sound startled them all. Oh, don't stop now, he said between chuckles. This is the most teamwork I've seen all day. But inside, he wasn't laughing. He could feel the pulse growing beneath his skin, a low vibration that resonated with something deep in his chest. It wasn't just energy anymore, it felt alive, like a heartbeat syncing with his own. The idea that Prometheus might be conscious terrified him, but he couldn't afford that emotion. Calm was the only thing holding everything together. The irony wasn't lost on him. His stillness was diffuse. An alarm blared again. Foreign energy signature spreading through fleet network. The ship's voice intoned. Zoro froze. Fleet network? Milo muttered under his breath. Oh, that's just perfect. The pulse wasn't confined to one ship. It was jumping through their entire communication grid. Every Zorthan vessel connected to the command network was now infected. His calm cracked for just an instant, a single tremor of panic in his pulse. The watch reacted instantly, flashing bright red. He closed his eyes and inhaled, forcing the fear back down. The light dimmed. Okay, he whispered to himself. Not yet. Zoro caught the flicker of fear and smiled with triumph. There. You fear us now. The calm is breaking. Milo's voice was quiet but firm. No, not fear. Calculation. He looked up slowly. You're not dealing with panic, Commander. You're dealing with inevitability. Another explosion rocked the chamber. The ceiling cracked, sending molten sparks raining down. One alien was thrown across the floor, its glow sputtering out. Milo stumbled, bracing himself on the console. Zoro hovered near the central pillar, screaming orders no one could follow. Shut down the human's device! Disconnect the ship's heart! The technicians hesitated, knowing it was already too late. The energy was everywhere now, threads of blue lightning crawling up every wall, humming with rhythm like breathing. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Milo's mind floated somewhere between memory and nightmare, the hum of energy still echoing faintly in his ears. For a few seconds, he couldn't tell if he was alive or part of the static that now filled the silence. Then came sound, faint, mechanical, uneven. He opened his eyes to chaos. The once pristine alien command ship was a mess of smoke and flickering light. Wires hung like vines, consoles sparked, and the metallic scent of burnt circuits filled the air. A voice somewhere shouted in garbled alien tones. He shifted, realizing with dull surprise that he wasn't restrained anymore. His watch still blinked on his wrist, though the digits had reset to a quiet, pulsing 0. He touched it gently. You're still with me, he whispered, though he wasn't sure if that was a relief or a warning. Around him, the Zorthans staggered in disarray. Their glow, once brilliant and steady, now flickered like dying fireflies. Zoro Prime was gone, or maybe melted into the half-collapsed wall where an enormous scorch mark pulsed faintly. A handful of alien officers shouted orders, trying to regroup. Milo tried standing, his body heavy with exhaustion. Every nerve screamed protest, but he forced himself upright. All right, he muttered, scanning the chaos. What's step 2 of the plan? Oh right, survive. He stumbled toward what looked like a hallway, but the floor had tilted at an awkward angle. Gravity pulsed strangely, shifting directions every few seconds, as though the ship itself couldn't decide which way was down. An alien staggered toward him, one eye cracked, the translator around its neck hissing static. It pointed a shaking limb at him, and tried to speak. The translator sputtered, then blurted. You smell like apocalypse. Milo raised an eyebrow. That's fair. I feel like it too. The alien collapsed, unconscious, its body dimming to a faint glow. He moved on, weaving through the smoke. The walls trembled, vibrating under stress. Through a broken viewport, he saw a stretch of space filled with drifting debris, ships, or pieces of them. The pulse had traveled farther than he imagined. Prometheus hadn't just disabled the mothership, it had reached the fleet. Hundreds of alien vessels were now dead, their lights extinguished, spinning silently through the void. Milo exhaled, a strange mixture of triumph and regret pressing against his chest. He'd saved Earth, yes, but at what cost? Then came the noise, a low murmur, almost like laughter. He turned sharply. A cluster of smaller Zorthans huddled near the back of the command deck, arguing heatedly. One of them, wearing what looked like a ceremonial robe, gestured wildly with a glowing appendage. The translator, still glitching, interpreted their exchange as nonsense. The calm one broke the storm, it said. The storm mocks the calm. Milo frowned. The tone, despite the mangled translation, carried emotion, fear mixed with awe. They weren't fighting each other this time, they were afraid of him. He took a cautious step forward. Hey, calm down, he said reflexively, then realized how ironic that sounded. I'm not here to. The nearest alien screamed, grabbing a blaster from the floor. Milo ducked instinctively as a beam of light scorched past him, searing a line across the wall. Okay, he shouted. So much for talking. He sprinted behind a shattered console as more plasma bolts flew past. Smoke filled the air again, turning everything into a blur of motion and panic. He peeked over the edge, watching the aliens shouting in disarray. They weren't coordinated anymore. Fear had replaced hierarchy. The mighty Zorthan command was reduced to a mob of terrified soldiers. Milo spotted something useful, a small panel still glowing faintly under the rubble. If he could reach it, maybe he could access the ship's internal systems or at least stabilize the artificial gravity before it crushed him. He took a deep breath and rolled out from behind cover, diving toward the panel. A plasma bolt grazed his arm, burning through his sleeve. He hissed through his teeth but kept moving. He slammed his hand against the screen. It flickered, glitching between alien runes and static. "Come on," he muttered. "I've fixed printers harder than this." The display stabilized briefly, revealing a control grid. He couldn't read their language, but he recognized patterns, energy routes, environmental regulators, weapon systems. His hands flew across the surface, guessing through logic. The hum of the ship deepened, and gravity steadied beneath his feet. "That's more like it." Behind him, chaos erupted again. One of the alien officers, a broad creature with fractured armor and twitching tentacles, began shouting in its guttural tongue. The translator managed to render fragments. "The Calm One is cursed, his silence burns, destroy him before the light returns." Milo rolled his eyes. "Great, now I'm a myth." The officer lunged at him, weapon raised. He dodged barely in time, the impact shattering the console. Sparks exploded, and the screen went black. Milo swung his elbow up and caught the creature under its jawline, if that was even what it was. The alien reeled back, stunned. Milo grabbed the fallen blaster and fired instinctively. The beam struck true. The creature collapsed in a heap of fading luminescence. For a moment, the only sound was the slow crackle of burning wires. He lowered the weapon, chest heaving. Around him, the remaining aliens froze. Their wide eyes reflected the flicker of his watch light, the soft pulse of zeros still glowing against his wrist. They began whispering among themselves. Milo couldn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Reverence. They were afraid, but also beginning to believe something absurd. One alien knelt, trembling. Another followed. Soon half the chamber was bowing. Milo stared, dumbfounded. "Oh no," he said softly. "Don't do that. Don't start a religion." But the damage was done. The Zorthans were murmuring in unison now, voices low and melodic. The translator caught pieces. "The Calm One survived the zero light. He commands the silence." Milo rubbed his temples. "Fantastic. I'm the prophet now." He turned, searching for an exit. The ship shuddered again, pulling his focus back to survival. The remaining systems were failing fast. Somewhere deep below, the reactor groaned, a sound that carried finality. He ran down the corridor, ignoring the bowing aliens. The halls twisted with heat distortion, panels glowing red as energy bled from broken conduits. Every few seconds, he had to duck falling debris or sidestep collapsing walls. His mind raced. If the reactor went critical, the ship would detonate, taking him, and possibly the entire wreckage field, with it. He needed to find a pod, or at least an escape shaft. His watch pulsed faintly, as though sensing his urgency. For a second, he thought he heard Ria's voice again, quiet and steady. "Keep moving. Calm isn't standing still. It's choosing direction." He followed the faint emergency lights toward a narrow chamber marked with alien glyphs. The door resisted, then slid open reluctantly. Inside were several small pods, sleek and half buried under rubble. He climbed into the nearest one, brushing away debris. The controls were unfamiliar, but instinct guided him. A holographic interface flickered to life. The alien language glowed across the screen, translating clumsily into fragments. "Destination void, authorization unknown," he muttered under his breath. "Anywhere but here." The pod drifted through a field of broken light. Fragments of alien ships floated like dying stars, their remains reflecting across the pod's glass canopy in slow, shimmering waves. Milo sat in silence, his reflection pale and hollow. The hum of the pod's engine was steady but weak, a faint tremor under his palms. He hadn't spoken in hours, and for the first time since the abduction, there was no one left to answer. The watch on his wrist still blinked with its quiet 0, the pulse long ended but never fully gone. He could feel it deep in his bones, a faint rhythm that wasn't his heartbeat but something older, colder, and far less human. He closed his eyes and leaned his head back. Every part of him ached, not just from the crash, but from the weight of what he'd done. He had destroyed a fleet. Thousands of intelligent lives erased in the blinding wash of the Prometheus pulse. The memory of their screams, the flicker of their light before extinction, replayed behind his eyelids. He told himself it was survival, that they had brought this on themselves. But the truth pressed harder than logic. He had crossed a line that even war didn't justify. A soft chime pulled him out of his thoughts. The pod's sensors detected movement nearby. He straightened, eyes narrowing as a shadow appeared against the stars. Another ship, smaller than the Zorthan vessels, but moving with deliberate precision. The pod's translation system crackled to life. Unidentified human life form detected. Identify or be neutralized. The voice was sharp, efficient, and unmistakably human. Milo almost laughed from disbelief. Took you long enough, he muttered, activating the pod's distress beacon. Milo Trent, Earth origin. Civilian classification, former Prometheus engineer. There was a pause before the voice returned, colder now. Prometheus? Hold position. You are to be boarded. The lights outside grew brighter as a docking latch extended, clamping onto the pod's hull with a deep metallic thud. A hiss of pressure followed, and the door above him slid open. A figure dropped through, helmeted, armored, carrying the insignia of the Earth Alliance defense. The soldier leveled a weapon at him. Hands where I can see them. Milo raised his hands slowly. I'd salute, but I'm running low on enthusiasm. The soldier hesitated, scanning him. You're supposed to be dead, they said quietly. Milo gave a tired shrug. I get that a lot today. More soldiers entered behind the first, moving with silent efficiency. They lifted him out of the pod and escorted him through the docking corridor into the ship. The transition from wreckage to order was dizzying. Clean white walls, polished floors, and the faint hum of life support systems greeted him. For a moment, he almost relaxed. Then he saw the emblem etched into the control room's glass, Prometheus Division. They sat him in a small, sterile chamber. A single light flickered overhead, casting sharp shadows. He waited, listening to the hum of air filters and distant voices. The door finally opened, and a woman stepped in. She looked older than he remembered, but her eyes hadn't changed. Rhea. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Neither spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. You shouldn't be alive. Milo smiled faintly. You built the thing. You really think it would let me die easily? She sat opposite him, her hands folded neatly. The pulse reached every Zorthan ship within range. Their entire fleet is gone. Earth intercepted the energy signature. We thought it was an attack. Then we found your signal. Her voice trembled slightly on the last words. You turned Prometheus into what we feared it could become. Milo leaned forward. I didn't have a choice. They were going to use it against Earth. She looked at him for a long moment, eyes sharp. And how many of them did you kill to save yourself? He said nothing. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Rhea's gaze softened slightly. You were always the calm one, she said quietly. That's why I trusted you with it. But calm isn't the same as right. He closed his eyes. You think I don't know that? The door hissed open again, and an officer entered, whispering something to Rhea. She stood. They're transmitting a signal from the remnants of the Zorthan command net. It's repeating one word. Your name. Milo frowned. What do they want? Rhea hesitated. We think they believe you're their leader now. He stared at her. Their what? She nodded grimly. Their systems still respond to your biometric signature. The pulse rewrote part of their neural network. To them, you're the calm one, the being who survived the 0 point. Their god. Milo leaned back, trying to process it. He wanted to laugh, but the absurdity was too sharp to be funny. So they're worshipping the guy who destroyed them. Rhea looked uneasy. It's not worship. It's obedience. They're rebuilding what's left of them. And they're waiting for your command. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. He thought of the terrified faces aboard the mothership, the chaos, the screaming, the light. Now those same beings were rebuilding in his name. A cold realization settled over him. The pulse hadn't just killed, it had connected. Prometheus hadn't ended them, it had merged them with the signal. They were alive, somewhere in the network, and they were reaching for him. Rhea must have seen the change in his expression. Milo, she said carefully, whatever connection exists between you and them, we need to sever it. You can't let them keep following you. He met her eyes. And if they don't stop? Then we shut down Prometheus permanently. Even if it means shutting you down with it. The threat hung in the air like smoke. He stared at the glowing 0 on his wrist. It pulsed faintly, and beneath the surface, he could feel the presence again, the hum of the alien network, faint whispers threading through his thoughts. Words without sound, emotion without language. They were calling to him. He stood slowly. You won't have to shut it down, he said quietly. I will. Rhea stepped forward, alarmed. What are you planning? He looked past her at the viewport, where distant stars burned like tiny, indifferent witnesses. I started this. I'll end it. But I need a ship. Hours later, he stood in a launch bay, suited up in a simple flight uniform. The engineers had tried to dissuade him, but Rhea had understood. She walked beside him to the airlock, silent until the last moment. You could stay, she said softly. Let someone else carry the burden. He shook his head. Calm doesn't mean staying still, remember? She smiled faintly through the ache in her eyes. You always were impossible. He looked at her one last time. You built Prometheus to protect us. Maybe this is what protection looks like, ugly, heavy, but necessary. He stepped into the small shuttle, the airlock sealing behind him with a low hiss. The engines ignited, propelling him back toward the wreckage field where the Zorthans had died, and now, perhaps, lived in another form. His watch pulsed once more, and a faint, familiar whisper echoed in his mind. The calm one returns. Milo exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the horizon of stars. Not as a god, he murmured. As a mistake that needs fixing. The engines roared, and the shuttle vanished into the black. The stars outside the shuttle stretched into silver lines as Milo crossed the edge of human territory. The faint hum of the engines blended with his heartbeat, each pulse echoing through the small cockpit. He had been flying for days with no destination marked, guided only by the faint signals still vibrating through his wristwatch. The 0 had not stopped pulsing, a constant reminder that the connection between him and the Zorthans was still alive. Each flicker of light across the display seemed to whisper to him, drawing him closer to the remnants of the destroyed fleet. Sleep came in short, restless bursts. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them, their glowing faces, their trembling limbs, their mocking laughter cut off by blinding light. It wasn't guilt that haunted him now. It was unfinished conversation. On the 5th day, the signal intensified. The ship's console flickered with alien symbols that rearranged themselves into something almost readable. A voice followed, soft and layered, as if several beings were speaking at once. The calm one returns. We await the correction. Milo rubbed his temples, muttering. Correction. That's one way to put it. He adjusted the course toward the origin point of the transmission. The coordinates led him to what had once been the Zorthan Command's primary vessel. Or at least, what was left of it. The ship's remains were fused into a new shape, metal twisted and reformed, glowing faintly with blue veins of energy. It looked like something alive had grown around the wreckage, rebuilding from the bones of the dead. He slowed the shuttle and hovered above the structure. His sensors couldn't decide whether it was a ship or a living organism. He didn't know what frightened him more, that they had survived, or that they had evolved. As he approached, a docking bay opened of its own accord, as if recognizing him. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then guided the shuttle in. The doors sealed behind him, and the interior lights came to life in soft waves, blue and silver intertwining like breath and light. When he stepped out, the air was thin but breathable. He could feel the hum beneath his feet, the rhythm of something vast and aware. The walls pulsed faintly as he walked, reacting to his movements. At the center of the corridor, a shape materialized, tall, translucent, humanoid, and unmistakably familiar. Zoro Prime, or what had once been him. His form flickered like a hologram caught between dimensions. "You returned," the voice said, though it no longer carried the same menace. Milo stopped a few steps away. "Apparently I'm not great at quitting." Zoro tilted his head, light rippling through his body. "You became what you destroyed. The Calm One now commands the silence." Milo shook his head. "No. I'm not your commander. I came to end this." The corridor darkened slightly, and the air thickened, pressing against his lungs. "End?" Zoro repeated, almost curious. "You cannot end what has no beginning. The pulse merged us. Your signal is ours. We exist within your calm." Milo felt the truth of it even before the word settled. The pulse had bound them together. His heartbeat, his thoughts, even his emotions resonated within their network. He was the source, and they were the echo. If he wanted to free them, he would have to sever the connection entirely. But the cost was obvious. If their link broke, his consciousness might go with it. He stepped closer. "You don't need me. You can rebuild without worship, without war. That's what I came to say." The holographic alien studied him silently. "You think we seek worship. You misunderstand. Calm is power. You wield it, but you do not understand it. You killed our chaos. We are grateful." Milo exhaled slowly. "You shouldn't be." He looked down at his wristwatch, the zero pulsing like a heartbeat. "I can shut it down. All of it. But once I do, there won't be anything left between us." For the first time, Zoro's tone softened. "You fear the end." Milo met the glowing eyes. "No. I'm just tired of watching things burn." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small metallic chip, the original Prometheus control core. Rhea had slipped it into his hand before he left, saying only, "If you find a way to finish it, use this." It pulsed faintly now, reacting to the alien energy around them. He slotted it into the side of his watch. The hum deepened instantly. The corridor's lights dimmed. Zoro flickered. "You will destroy the network," he said. Milo nodded. "That's the idea." A low vibration filled the air, the pulse rising like a slow tide. He felt it in his teeth, his bones, his thoughts. Every memory, every emotion he had buried began surfacing. His laughter, his failures, Rhea's quiet faith, the faces of the aliens he had killed. They weren't separate anymore. It was all one stream of existence, flowing through him and into the core of the ship. The walls glowed brighter, resonating with the pulse. The voice of Zoro merged with others, hundreds of tones blending into one. "The Calm One completes the circle." Milo's vision blurred. "No," he whispered, gripping the console beside him. "I'm breaking it." He pressed the command on his watch. The world erupted in light. The energy shot through the corridors, burning away everything artificial and organic alike, but it wasn't destruction this time. It was release. He felt the connection unraveling, the threads between him and the Zorthans stretching, snapping one by one. The voices faded, not screaming but sighing, as if relieved. His body grew lighter. The air thinned until he could barely breathe. He fell to his knees, the floor beneath him turning translucent. Through it he saw space, the infinite black expanse speckled with stars. The pulse spread outward, a wave of blue light washing over the wreckage field, consuming it in silence. He thought of Rhea then. Her hands steady on the console, her voice clear when she said calm isn't silence, it's choice. He wondered if she would understand what he'd done. Maybe she would even forgive him. The light grew blinding, filling every corner of his vision. The hum slowed, fading into stillness. Then there was nothing. Somewhere far away, on Earth, a transmission flickered through the static of a satellite dish. NASA technicians stared in disbelief as a faint human voice came through, distorted but clear enough to understand. System stable. Countdown complete. The signal source was traced to deep space, but no ship was found. The coordinates matched the last known position of the destroyed Zorthan fleet. The analysts argued for weeks, but the recording became legend, a ghost in the signal, a whisper that refused to die. Months later, Rhea stood by her window, staring at the night sky. The world had changed since the battle. The stars seemed closer now, the air quieter somehow. She kept Milo's old workstation untouched, the cracked mug still sitting beside the terminal. The watch he had worn was gone, lost in space, but sometimes, when the night was still enough, the monitors flickered with faint pulses of blue light. She smiled softly. "You did it," she whispered.